Give me oil in my lamp, keep me burning. Give me oil in my lamp, I pray. Give me oil in my lamp, keep me burning, burning, burning. Keep me burning till the break of day. I have to admit that I agree with the Reverend Dr. Anna Carter Florence. Today's gospel reading challenges much of what I believe about God. This parable seems to be about ignoring the needs of others, about looking out for ourselves and our own interests. But if the key message of the gospel were taking care of ourselves, then wouldn't so many other teachings of Jesus have sounded a lot different? Just imagine you're sitting there listening to Jesus teach the Sermon on the Mount. And Jesus says, "Do not store up for yourselves treasure on earth, where moth and rust consume, where a thief can come in and steal. Instead, store up for yourselves treasure in heaven. Although, to get there, you're going to need large oil reserves. So forget about that first part I said. Store up for yourselves oil on earth so you can have treasure in heaven." Or maybe Jesus would say, "Ask, and it will be given to you. Seek, and you will find. Knock, and the door will be open to you." Unless, of course, you're late and the bridegroom answers, well, then you might as well forget about it. Or maybe, in everything you do, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. In everything except oil, that is, which changes all the rules. Frankly, I'm with Dr. Florence. This is not what I want to teach my children about God. And honestly, I just don't get it. How can the kingdom of heaven be like not sharing what you have with others in need? And I honestly can't even begin to imagine Jesus not letting someone into the kingdom of heaven who asks to be let in. It makes me want to just move on to another text. And yet, I was taught when a text in the Bible challenges me or confuses me, that's not the time to shut the book and move on. That's the time to read it again and again, and to talk to others, and to explore what the text really says, keeping in mind the heart of the gospel. That God so loved the world that God sent God's only Son to die on a cross for us. And we are saved by God's grace as a gift. And nothing we can do will ever change that. So in light of that good news, what then are we to make of this really difficult story? Well, first, I do not think this is the time when we try to figure out who are the wise and who are the foolish among us. And as a matter of fact, I don't think any time is a good time for us to play the judge, especially when it comes to salvation. And herein lies a bit of the danger I find in this text. Because if our salvation is dependent upon our own preparation, well, then we are all going to be like those foolish bridesmaids locked out in the cold. Because we all fall short of the glory of God. That's why we need Jesus. So let's first agree that we're not going to try to figure out who's who in this story. Because in all likelihood, we are both at different times in our lives. And second, I think that it's important to keep in mind that while Matthew talks a lot about Jesus' second coming in these last couple of chapters in his gospel, and we get to hear more of that in the coming weeks as we head toward Christ the King Sunday and the end of our church calendar year, I think it's easy for us to want to just skip over texts like this as a people who live almost 2,000 years after Jesus has died, because we don't spend our days with our eyes staring up at the clouds anticipating Jesus coming down later today. And yet, we are a people who believe that Jesus is already a very real and present part of our lives. So perhaps the question is, what can this text teach us about God's will for our lives here and now? And perhaps it is as simple as keep awake, and for heaven's sakes, be prepared. Although being prepared for God is different than our traditional understanding. We all like to be prepared, don't we? We like to have a flask of oil at the ready when we need it. I think coming prepared to preach with the words to say makes it a little bit easier. And with our busy lives, if our to-do list is in order and our schedules are well planned, we can accomplish so much more. And certainly having savings accounts, investments, retirement accounts, or insurance policies, those are important safety nets for a rainy day. But this parable isn't talking about that kind of to-do list preparation or that kind of oil reserved for a rainy day. I think this text is a story about the oil within us, the oil we carry with us, the preparation that we do in our hearts for those times when our lamps are burning out. I recently learned about a lecture given at Columbia Seminary, which the professors teach the students about the life of a Christian. And they, during one point in the lecture, bring out an oil lamp that looks similar to this one. An old-fashioned kind of oil lamp with a wick and real oil in it. And they talk about how the role of a Christian is to be the light of the world. Then they light the wick and they watch it burn. But because the lamp has very little oil in it, something they rig, the lamp only burns for a few moments. Then the professor asks, what happens when the oil runs out? The light goes out, and you have nothing more to give. A Christian cannot be the light of the world without oil, no matter how much you want to. Then the professor asks, what fills you up spiritually when you run dry? What replenishes your oil? Where do you see God? And how can you be sure to have enough of that kind of oil for your lamp so that God can fill you up again? And I think you'll agree that there are some things you just can't borrow from someone else. You think about the teenager who can borrow a homework assignment to help get past one assignment, but they can't borrow that other student's hours that they put into studying for a test. There are just some kinds of preparation you have to do for yourself. I mean, you can't borrow someone else's peace of mind or their passion for God. Just like you can't say to a friend, wow, you have a really great marriage. Can I have some of that? It doesn't work. You have to find it for yourself. You have to figure out what fills you up spiritually, and then make sure you have that with you for those times when your lamp is running dry. But how? How do we fill up when we already fill our lives with work or with school or electronic devices or the internet or social media? Aren't our days already a string of meetings or soccer games and piano lessons and doctor's appointments? But as Reverend Kirk Kubitschek puts it, despite all this stimulation and busyness, we tend to make our way through life sleepwalking. And through it all, we remain somehow unaware of the spiritual dimension in our lives. We let that part of our life wait. We trick ourselves into thinking there'll be time to work on that later. But what if the time is now? What if the bridegroom is here and you never did bring that flask? The Spirit is all around us. What do you need to do to feel her presence in your life? Some suggest prayer. Others suggest actually getting rid of that busyness and literally doing nothing. Creating a point of entry for God into our busy lives. Certainly, being a part of a church community is a way to get support and help. Or maybe it's in volunteering, serving others, or simply spending some time in nature. What fills you up spiritually when you run dry? What replenishes your oil? Do that, because the time is now. Maybe in the end, this story does have something to teach us. After all, Jesus wants our spiritual awareness to be central in our daily lives so that we can be awakened to the very real presence of God in every breath we take. Give me oil in my lamp, keep me burning. Give me oil in my lamp, I pray. Give me oil in my lamp, keep me burning, 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 keep me burning till the break of day. Amen.